Good evening, welcome to ITV News. This is Thursday night's calendar.
Hello, here are tonight's main stories.
18 years since the fatal shooting of PC Sharon Bashaniewsky in Bradford, a man appears in court, charged with her murder.
Just how bad is bed blocking in our region? We've the story of the 86-year-old mother who's still in hospital 5 weeks after being deemed fit to be discharged.
We needed Mum to go into a home to have full 24-hour care. We found a place that's amazing, but they said unfortunately it doesn't work like that.
We examine just how many people could be discharged and hear about the red tape being faced by care homes. Also tonight.
The plea to keep the faith as churches count the cost of a shortage of volunteers. And
is the truth really out there? We're in French Guiana ahead of an 8-year mission to Jupiter. As scientists from Sheffield have helped to search for extraterrestrial life.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. First tonight, 18 years after PC Sharon Bashaniewsky was gunned down on the streets of Bradford whilst doing her duty, a man has appeared in court in London charged with her murder.
74-year-old Pirandita Khan appeared before Westminster magistrates this morning after being extradited from Pakistan.
In a moment, we'll have the latest from court. First, though, let's head live to our reporter Fraser Maud, who's in Bradford, where few people have forgotten the day PC Sharon Bashaniewsky died.
Yes, Lara, it's almost 18 years since Sharon Bashaniewsky was killed in the line of duty outside the Universal Travel Agency, just a few hundred yards away from where her memorial now stands here in the centre of Bradford. It was an attack that stunned the community and that devastated West Yorkshire Police. An attack on 2 female police officers, both unarmed, both relatively new to the force, who were simply doing their job, responding to reports of a robbery, neither of them aware of the dangers they were about to face. Sharon Bashaniewsky had been in the force for just 9 months when she was shot dead. She was a wife, a mother to 3 children and stepmother to 2 more. Her colleague, Teresa Milburn, was also injured in the same incident. The pair were shot at as they responded to a call to a travel agent's in Morley Street in Bradford. Colleagues, some of them armed, began the investigation into who was responsible for the death of one of their own.
The murder of PC Sharon Bashaniewsky and the attempted murder of her colleague PC Teresa Milburn sent a shockwave, not only through West Yorkshire but throughout the world. We will still mourn the loss of Sharon. She will never be forgotten. The persistence to bring justice to all those involved in the murder of PC Bashaniewsky has never wavered. I know my colleagues within West Yorkshire will now be watching closely the wheels of justice turning in this case.
5 men have been convicted in the 18 years since Sharon Bashaniewsky's death, 3 for murder and 2 for manslaughter. A 6th man, Pirandita Khan, was arrested in Pakistan 3 years ago after warrants were issued back in 2006 and again in 2018. He was extradited to Britain on Wednesday and initially brought to West Yorkshire before being taken to London. When she died, Sharon Bashaniewsky had just 2 hours left of her shift when she would have gone home to celebrate her daughter's 4th birthday party. Fraser Maud, ITV News, Bradford.
Well, let's head to London now, where today's hearing took place, and our reporter Grant Vincent was in Westminster Magistrates Court, from where he sent us this report.
Pirandita Khan appeared before a district judge here at Westminster Magistrates Court. He was wearing a dark tracksuit top and walking with a limp as he made his way to the front of the dock, where he confirmed his name and his date of birth, which was October the 13th, 1948. The court heard that prior to his extradition to this country, he was arrested in Pakistan in 2020. He is charged with the murder of PC Sharon Bashaniewsky and 5 other counts. One of robbery of a quantity of cash from that travel agent in Morley Street in Bradford. 2 counts of possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. 2 counts of possession of a prohibited weapon, a machine gun and a 9mm pistol. It was a short hearing during which no application for bail was made, and Pirandita Khan was directed by the judge to appear before the Central Criminal Court here in London on Monday.
Grant Vincent reporting from Westminster Magistrates.
In other news now, an inquest into the death of a brother and sister in a house fire in Bradford has heard they barricaded themselves in their home and set fire to it. Alan and Linda McGinty died in the blaze on Ringwood Road in March last year. A coroner said it was a tragic event involving two lonely people who had wanted to escape from society. They were known to social services but had refused help.
A man has been jailed for life after murdering a 24-year-old and hiding his body under paving slabs in Leeds. 25-year-old Aidan Ramsdale was sentenced to a minimum term of 33 years for the murder of Bradley Wall. The victim was found in a stairwell to the basement of a house in Beeston, having received more than 100 injuries.
Next, the story of an 86-year-old woman from Rotherham who spent the last 5 weeks in an NHS hospital, even though she didn't need to. Her daughter is angry and frustrated, knowing that her mother is a bed blocker and increasingly losing her independence.
Beryl Mollikin was taken to Sheffield's Northern General Hospital in January after breaking 3 bones in a fall. She's now well enough to leave hospital, but delays in finding her a suitable care home means she's still there.
Beryl's story comes to light as government analysis suggests almost a quarter of patients blocking beds in hospital are waiting for specialist home care. Amelia Beckett reports.
12 weeks ago, Beryl broke her shoulder, rib and thigh bone after falling at home. When her daughters found her, their priority was getting her into hospital. But they never imagined that 3 months later, they'd be fighting to get her out.
She was medically discharged on the 7th of March and they basically got to a stage where they said that they'd done as much as they could do. We made it quite clear from the beginning that we needed Mum to go into a home to have full 24-hour care. We found a place that's amazing. We said this to the hospital, but they said, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. We can't choose.
That means Beryl has now been stuck at Northern General for 5 weeks longer than necessary. This was her just yesterday, unable to walk, confined to a chair.
She's a different person. You know, when she went in, she was totally sound of mind, very alert, and, you know, you could have a great conversation with her. But now, a month down the line from that, she's just deteriorating every day.
NHS South Yorkshire told us, "We're very sorry that Mrs Mollikin has been an inpatient for longer than is required. We very much understand the concerns of her family and we're working hard to try and discharge her from hospital. Unfortunately, due to the significant ongoing care Mrs Mollikin requires, it's been difficult to find a suitable next place of care."
Beryl's case is extreme, but our analysis shows that across Sheffield Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, in March this year, an average of 269 patients remained in hospital who were fit for discharge every day. There are around 2,000 beds across the trust. That means, on average, 14% are taken up each day by people who don't need them.
At this care home in Sheffield, they say they get calls almost weekly about patients needing to be discharged into care.
People are desperate to get people out of hospital. That put lots of pressure on care homes. If we're not the right place, there's nowhere else for them to go. So the stakes are really high to get somebody looked after properly.
A lot of people have pointed to a lack of space in care homes. Is that not necessarily the case?
I don't think that's right. I think people are very much concentrating on sorting the NHS bit, getting people out of the hospital. What they really need to do is fix the social care first, because we've got the space, you just need enough staffing, and that costs money.
For now, Sue and Beverly continue to make the 30-mile round trip to hospital to see their mother, each day hoping the next time they visit her, she'll be somewhere that feels more like home.
Well, Amelia joins us from outside Sheffield Northern General Hospital. Amelia, cases like Beryl's affect the families, of course, but also the wider system, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, Beryl's case is extreme, but sadly, it's not rare. We hear all the time of problems accessing beds in hospitals, and that issue with discharge is one of the main reasons for that. Now, the government is pumping some money into this to try and help. They told us today that they're fully committed to speeding up the safe discharge of patients, and last week they announced an extra £1.6 billion to help with this. They've also set up a specific discharge fund. Now, South Yorkshire has received around £14 million of this, and so far the data does suggest that it's helping speed up that process. But it's clear that Beryl's case highlights that funding is only a part of solving this extremely complex challenge.
Amelia, thank you.
Well, we'd love to hear about your experiences of the NHS at the moment. Maybe you've been affected by this week's strikes by junior doctors. Have you had an operation or an appointment cancelled? Or indeed, maybe you've been to hospital over the last few days and actually found it quieter than normal. Do get in touch. calendar@itv.com is the email, or of course you can always find us as ever on social media.
Yeah, we really do love to hear from you. Still to come here on Calendar tonight. Oof, why not digging your garden could be a better way to grow your veg.
And it was rinse and repeat across the region today once more. Sunny spells to begin, but a lot of cloud and a high risk of showers for the afternoon. Where does that leave us for Friday into the weekend? All the detail a little later on.
Thank you, Kerry. Now, think of a local church and there's usually an army of volunteers working behind the scenes to keep it running.
Yes, I think there always is, isn't there?
Certainly is.
But the number of volunteers is now dwindling to the point that 1 in 4 churches say the shortage is affecting their ability to offer services to the community.
Yeah, services like food banks and debt support. Well, Kevin Ashford has been hearing from a volunteer who gives up his time to help at a church near Chesterfield.
Rob Aldred volunteers as, amongst other roles, Director of Music and Treasurer at Dronfield Parish Church. He says they're always on the lookout for other helpers.
There are lots of different roles. This is a Grade 1 listed church, been here since 1135. It takes a lot of maintenance and keeping going. So just some of the most mundane things like cleaning. People might assume we've got money and we can afford to pay cleaners. We can't afford to pay cleaners, so we're relying on volunteers. So if there were people in the community that were willing to help us with that, it would be great.
Unpaid helpers are vital for churches whose role these days often stretches well beyond the pulpit and pews, running activities for all ages and increasingly offering help for those in need during the cost of living crisis. In a survey of 500 churches, more than a third said they now run food banks. More than 1 in 10 offered debt support. But more than half of those questioned said they'd seen a fall in the number of volunteers they need to run those schemes.
Without these volunteers, that it is possible that churches will have to stop providing these much needed and much valued community services, or even close altogether. And we know that churches are, even though they are facing challenges, still really want to provide these local community services, and the lack of volunteers in some cases are holding them back.
This church is typical in experiencing an increasing demand for its services at a time when volunteers needed to staff them are harder to find.
It's not as easy as we might like. We've lost volunteers, particularly over the course of the pandemic. We found that people were finding different ways of being on a Sunday, and some just haven't come back again. So there's still the same need, seeing the same things we'd like to do, but less people who volunteer to help run them.
As the cost of living crisis deepens, meeting that demand will become even more challenging. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Sign of the times, isn't it? Well, let's check in with what's happening in the ITV Evening News at 6:30. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, guilty of gross misconduct. 8 serving and former Met police officers who shared offensive WhatsApp messages. The officers, 7 men and 1 woman, sent sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic and disablist messages, including about Katie Price's son. Could driving with no hands be the way of the future? Ford launches a new car in which drivers can sit back and relax a little. And Queen of the miniskirt, Dame Mary Quant, has died aged 93. We'll take a look back at her lasting impact on British fashion. Do join me for those stories and much more at 6:30.
Thank you, Mary. We will. Now, it's that time of year to get the garden ready for those warmer months ahead. Are you a gardener, Michael?
I like to think I'm a little bit green-fingered, but then if you saw the state of my garden at the moment, you might think it tells a bit of a different story.
Ah, well, listen up to this, because this means that you don't have to do any work. Apparently, for the green-fingered of you out there, you're being urged to reconsider digging up your flower beds and vegetable patches before planting.
Yes, apparently they call it no-dig gardening. It's very much what it says on the tin, leaving soil undisturbed and replicating the natural processes of decomposition to fertilise it. That sounds like my kind of gardening, I have to say. Nick Smith reports now on the movements sprouting up in gardens and allotments across our region.
For centuries, digging up the land seemed to be the preferred prerequisite to planting. But now more and more gardeners are choosing to ditch their shovels for a less labour-intensive approach. Andy Alsterfield is the founder of Grow Wakefield, running 12 community sites in his local area which offer people a patch to cultivate. He says he's been using methods which involve leaving the earth beneath him as undisturbed as possible, with a lot of benefits across his many gardens.
When we discovered no dig, what we do now is we use some pallet collars and we create the raised beds. We strip it down to start with, but then we put cardboard into the bottom of the beds, and then we buy in organic matter, recycled garden waste, that sort of thing, and put 6 to 8 inches in there, and that means you can start sowing into it and growing straight from the go, really. You're not spending weeks trying to weed it out first.
Stephanie Hafferty has been an avid no-dig gardener for several years and now runs courses passing on her techniques and expertise to others.
During the winter time, you get a lot of leaves that you can use in salads. You can put them in all kinds of things.
She says it allows her to grow a very versatile range of plants, even in our sometimes wet and windy climate.
You can grow absolutely everything in this method. All you need to do is just stop digging and carry on growing your vegetables, but instead of digging your compost into the garden every year, just put a little bit of mulch, composted mulch, on the surface, and the soil life incorporates that. You're feeding the soil, which in turn is feeding the plants.
No-dig gardening techniques grew from a greater understanding of soil science to preserve those vital ecosystems that exist in the ground beneath us and make sure that we don't disturb those integral fungal networks that link almost all of our plant life.
If you look at a soil, it's not individual particles. They tend to clump together into these crumbs or aggregates. And it's the channels between those aggregates that allow water and air and plant roots to flow through the soil. But the physical act of digging can sometimes break these aggregates up, and so it affects the soil structure. Digging also can bring up soil that was once deeper down up to the surface, and that can lead to carbon that was once stored quite safely in the soil, released as carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas.
So by leaving your soil undisturbed, it might not only bring benefits for your garden, but it also helps cut our emissions. To do that little bit more, to save the planet as well. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Well, I don't know if anybody remembers the calendar vegetable plot, but that's not been dug in years, I can guarantee. Now, a quick update on the fundraising appeal to build the Rob Burrow Centre for Motor Neurone Disease in Leeds, which has reached the halfway mark. Now, clearing work began last November at Seacroft Hospital for the site. The centre, which will be the first of its kind in the country, was initially due to cost £5 million, but inflation and enhancements to the centre mean it'll now cost £6.8 million.
There's a change on the cards for Leeds United's kit after Premier League clubs announced gambling sponsors will be banned on the front of matchday shirts. The club is one of 8 in the top tier which has a betting company as a shirt sponsor. The rule will come into effect at the end of the 2025-26 season, but it's understood brands could still feature on sleeves. Campaign group The Big Step has welcomed the move but wants further action with a ban on all forms of gambling ads in football. Now, the new cricket season's underway, but it's been a frustrating day for Yorkshire. Not a ball has been bowled down in Gloucestershire due to a wet outfield. Now, the pitch looks in good condition there, but after 2 days of heavy rain, parts of the pitch were underwater yesterday. They hope play will get underway tomorrow. I think they're paying the price for Storm Noah that you told us about yesterday, Kerry.
Yeah, it was
Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I went straight in there. Yeah, it was.
They were better off at Headingley, wouldn't they?
They would have definitely been better off at Headingley. Yeah, it was all very wet and very windy down there. A little bit breezy here today, but we did okay, didn't we, with that mix of sunshine and showers. But it's good news for the cricket season as we head into next week, because we've got a lot of settled weather to come. Even overnight tonight, under the clearer skies, it's looking like a touch of frost. So any keen gardeners, please be careful with your delicates overnight tonight, because there is a touch of frost possible. Now the jet stream is on the move, currently north of the jet stream and low pressure in charge. But during the weekend, the jet stream nudges northwards and it allows high pressure to build in. Could get an easterly out towards the coast, so maybe a little bit fresher out towards the coast there as we head into the next few days. But all settling down and warming up, thankfully.
Oh, it's the good news that we've been looking for all week, because frankly it's been a little bit miserable. But not great news for everybody though, is it?
No, it's not all good news. There's a little bit yin and yang, good and bad news. So the kids go back to school, typical, not great. But yes, the cricket season underway and great. We're looking at highs of around 16 or 17 as we head through into next week, and the average is around 14 Celsius. But tree pollen is also on the rise, and it could be high to very high by the end of the weekend into next week. So that's a heads up for anyone allergic to the tree pollen season, because that's really going to kick off as we head into next week. And also the UV sunburn risk. The sun is as high now as it is at the end of August. So slap on the sun cream if you're out, because not only will you feel it, it will feel warmer over the next few days. Yeah, you're going to notice it as well on your skin if you don't take care of it.
You can get caught out, can't you?
You do get caught out. I've got some nice photos to show you just at the end. Check out this. This was today, a red kite at the Harewood Estate. A big thank you to Guy Roberts. He was at the Muddy Boots Cafe, of course looking but not touching. The birds, our feathered friends, are nesting at the moment, aren't they? So it was after some food. This is Deborah Thompson's dog, Gru, the rescue greyhound, looking at those grey skies. But yeah, everything is going to look a little tiny bit better as we head into the next few days. So less of the rainy photos, I reckon. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Thank you, Kerry. Now, finally, we all like a quiz question, don't we?
No.
You're not allowed.
Not really.
You're not allowed to search the internet for this one. That's cheating.
Okay then.
What do you call money in space?
Useless.
Starbucks.
Ooh, like that one.
Do you? I thought you were actually going to groan.
No,
scientists,
I'll give it to the kids.
Scientists from the University of Sheffield have played their part in the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer mission, better known as JUICE.
Now, sadly, adverse weather meant that the mission was aborted. It was meant to take off from French Guiana in South America earlier today.
Well, Good Morning Britain's Laura Tobin was at mission control. I caught up with her earlier and she told me just how excited she was to be there.
Science. I just love how much science is involved here. So we're in French Guiana. This is Europe's spaceport. It should be a hive of activity behind me. Everything is black because the mission was aborted this morning. But it's the JUICE mission. It is Jupiter's Icy Moon Explorer, and it is heading towards Jupiter to explore that and 3 of its moons in hope to find signs of possible life outside our Earth, but potentially within our own solar system. It has a heck of a journey to get there. The science involved is incredible. An 8-year-long journey. It's going to use the gravitational pull of Earth. It's going to go around Earth 3 times and Venus, picking up speed, slingshotting every time to get out there. And once it does, it is dark, it is cold, there's huge amounts of radiation. So there's so much science and technology to keep it safe, to keep it in working order, and to make sure that all of the data comes back to us here on Earth in 8 years' time.
And so you've travelled thousands of miles to be out there at mission control. So what's this all got to do with professors and scientists from Sheffield?
The incredible thing is there are 10 pieces of scientific equipment on board, all measuring different things, but one of them, the University of Sheffield, have contributed to the development of. It is the radio plasma wave instrument. It measures electric and magnetic fields, which are around the icy moons of Jupiter. And it was one of the doctors there, Dr. Keith Yobi, who actually, there's so much data coming in. He's used a compression technique to make sure that we can squeeze the data down to be as small as possible to make sure it can easily be sent back to us here on Earth so we get as much data as possible. So his contribution integral and key.
You mentioned there, you know, it's quieter behind you than we'd like it to be because, of course, the mission should have taken off today. So what's next?
So it's checking the weather forecast, the one thing that they have no control over. So there was a risk of lightning, not actual lightning in the area, but if you take off into deep convective cloud with a huge rocket, that brings the risk of lightning. With all of the fuel involved, it just isn't safe. So we go again tomorrow, and if not, we delay every single day. We have the opportunity until the end of April. If we can't do it by the end of April, we have to wait until August.
Well, I mean, it blows my mind that we can even talk to you in French Guiana. So for these guys to get a rocket up to Jupiter is incredible stuff. Laura, thanks so much for talking to us, and let's keep our fingers crossed for tomorrow.
Indeed.
It's true, it really blows my tiny mind.
It is tiny as well.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to Laura this afternoon, thank you. But if you're as fascinated as I've been today and want to follow all of the twists and turns of the mission to Jupiter, just head over to itv.com/news where you can find out much more.
Meanwhile, back down to earth, here's Kerry.
Good visibility on the horizon. Tiri sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again. So we stick with the unsettled story, at least for the end of this week, becoming a little bit more settled into the weekend. So expect a bit more in the way of blue sky Saturday, Sunday into the beginning of next week. But between now and then, still fairly unsettled. And it's a chilly night under those clearer skies overnight tonight. Still the risk of some heavy and possibly thundery showers mixed in with our sunshine for Friday. And then an improving story for the weekend and the start of next week. So this has been the story so far today. So we had a good start, certainly to southern parts of the region first thing, but definitely more cloud for the afternoon, and this showery band giving a few heavy downpours during the course of the day. But we're under those clearer skies as we head deeper into tonight, and the winds become a lot lighter than we've had of late. So light winds and clear skies means the temperatures will take a bit of a tumble, and a touch of frost not out of the question overnight tonight. The low single figures with light winds and maybe one or two rogue mist and fog patches. Highest risk of a shower to western fringes over the tops of the Pennines. 6:09 and 8:05 are your sun times as we head into tomorrow. It's another mix of sunny spells and showery outbreaks, and those showers will become more developed as the day progresses. So into the afternoon, with the winds lighter, those showers could be slow moving, heavy, merged to longer spells of rain, and potentially contain hail and thunder once more. Temperatures just below the average for the time of year, and those winds continuing light. There could be some more intense rainfall out towards the coastline just for a short time during tomorrow evening. Another cold and clear start as we head into Saturday, but you can see it's mostly dry, and the temperatures will start to rise over the next few days, becoming really quite pleasant, at least for a time into the start of next week.
Tiri sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There you go, lots of things to look forward to towards the weekend.
Hankies in the hand for those with hay fever problems, but nice
Absolutely.
to see a bit of springtime.
Yeah. And next week's going to be lovely.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Promise.
Thanks for watching. We'll have to go now.
Good
Bye-bye.
Bye.